You're listening to the Write Project podcast and radio program, a show about writing and modern Newfoundland author culture. This program is produced and recorded at CHMR FM 93.5 FM in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, and is aired on other great stations in the province and elsewhere in the country. It can also be heard online at www.chmr.ca. I'm your host, Matthew Ledrew. Thank you all for joining us for this episode of the Write Project podcast. Today we're going to be discussing something of a taboo subject when it comes to writers. We will not be discussing writer's block. That is something that you should never bring up with an author. It tends to be a bit of a sore subject. So today we're going to be discussing reader's block, which is a phenomenon wherein you can't get into a book, you can't get into a certain author, you can't read in general, or if you have a bunch of books on your to-read list, there's one that you can't get past, and that kind of bottlenecks your reading process. And that's important. Reading is an important part of the writing process. Any author that tells you that they don't read isn't really worth their salt. It's very much an input-output issue. Your reading is taking the information in, writing is pushing the information out. And without new input, there's only so much in the well, and it needs to be replenished every once in a while. It can be replenished with other mediums as well, but reading being the chief one. As such, when a book does block your reading process, it's inevitably blocking your information intake. It's blocking the feeding of that well. It's created a dam, which becomes a bit of an issue, and writers tend to remember what that book was. Today, we've got an all-star cast of writers to tell us what that book was for them. We've got Kelly Power, currently the president of WANL and a contributor to the short fiction compilations The Kitsora Autobiography, Chillers from the Rock, and What's Written in the Ladies. We've got John Dobbin, author of The Starving, coming in 2019. We have Amanda Labonte, author of Call of the Sea and Supernatural Causes. We have Diana Browne, author of Saltwater Joys. Ellen Curtis, author of the Infinity series and Compendium. We have Brad Dunn, whose book After Dark Vapors just came out this past Halloween. We have Bridget Canning, author of the greatest hits of Wanda Janes. We have Paul Carberry, best-selling author of the Zombies on the Rock series. And we have Aaron Vance, editor of the From the Rock series and editor-in-chief at Engine Books. So that's a great cast to go through and discuss what books cause them to have reader's block. We'll get some vast opinions there, I am sure. But we also have me, Matthew Ledrew, author of over 20 titles. And I have definitely had reader's block in the past. I've gone on a few reading excursions, let's call them, where I've given myself a goal to read a certain thing. I've attempted to read the top 100 voted science fiction novels of all time, and for a while was blocked on that list. I attempted to read every single issue of X-Men ever printed in chronological order, and was blocked many times during that, chiefly in the 60s and in the 90s. There were two periods where it was like, oh dear, the late 90s I mean. Early 90s was great for X-Men. But the one that comes to mind most when I talk about books that blocked me, that I could not get past despite an overwhelming desire to get past them, I'm sorry, was Lord of the Rings. I found it to be dense. I found it to be impenetrable. I had a very hard time getting past it. I tried several times. I tried when I was 12. I tried when I was 15. I tried again in my 20s, and again in my late 20s, I believe. Finally, I decided to take a course at Memorial University, a wonderful course taught by a wonderful instructor about Lord of the Rings. It was all about that course, and all you were reading was Tolkien's work. We've read Tree and Leaf, we read The Hobbit, and we read the Lord of the Rings trilogy. We read it as one complete text. And I did that because I'd read many books, some of which I enjoyed, some of which I didn't for school up to that point. And I always got through them because I had to for class. I forced myself to plow through any blocks. So I went in assuming that regardless, I would push past any blocks I had with Lord of the Rings and enjoy it and finally get to check that off my list. That was the assumption, and there was a major flaw in that assumption, because despite the course being wonderful, and it's being offered again next semester, I encourage anyone to take it, I did not enjoy The Lord of the Rings. I loved The Hobbit. Loved The Hobbit. I have a weird scales when it comes to Tolkien. I loved the Hobbit book and hated the movies, and I absolutely hate the Lord of the Rings book and loved the movies. I love the story. I hate the way that it's told. I love the universe. There's immense creativity there. I hate the execution of it. I love every part of it save for the execution and the prose and the actual writing. And especially Tom Bombadil. If I had to pick one thing that blocked me just in and of himself, as a whole, Lord of the Rings blocked me, but in specific, Tom Bombadil blocked me. And some will say, well, just skip him like the movies did. It ruined my suspension of disbelief. It undermined my faith in the book as a whole, in the concept, in the threat of the ring. It is a tension-destroying chapter early in a series that desperately needed that tension. So that's mine. I know that's controversial. Please don't at me. This has been litigated many times in the past. I know I'm wrong, I know I'm biased, I know I'm flawed, but that book is the book that blocked me. That along with William Gibson's Neuromancer, which is interesting because usually the people who defend Lord of the Rings to me are also the people who defend Neuromancer to me. So I wonder if there's just a certain writing style that blocks me. But you guys didn't tune in to hear all about me and what blocks me, so let's see what blocks the rest of our lovely panel of authors here. First we have Aaron Vance, writer of many short fiction pieces, but mainly known as the editor-in-chief at Engine Books. What book caused you reader's block, Aaron?
I find, this is going to sound so geeky, I find now because I've been editing so much, I almost have to read, like, I've been reading fics, like fan fiction of things, because I can't actually get into a novel anymore, because as soon as I sit down with an actual book, I have to start nitpicking it. Yeah. But for me, like, a fic is just something that someone's, and it's fun, and it's silly, and it's simple, and it's like, okay, that was a good cleanser? Yep. So there's been some books I've had to be like, nope, I can't read that no more. And there's some authors that I've tried like 4 or 5 times to read. I can't get into them.
William Gibson, for me, I can't read him.
I can't read Jane Austen, which people think is ridiculous. But no. I can't read her. I can't read Terry Pratchett, and I can't read much of Neil Gaiman. And everyone are like, these are like, Aaron will love these books. And I probably would if anyone but them wrote it. Which sounds so bad. I'm really sorry, guys.
No. I actually felt the same way about Terry Pratchett. If you ever want to try it again, don't start with the first 3. Terry Pratchett, where he created a world, there's actually, it's disingenuous to call it the Discworld series. It should be a lot of series that are set on the Discworld, like the Engine universe. So, like, I think you would find the series about death, the main, like where the Grim Reaper is the main character. I think you would find that whimsical and fun. So maybe start with that, which is the first one is book 4, and then you can look up online the different timelines. So it's like, oh, it's book 4 and then book 6 and then book 11, and just read those ones first. And if you don't like the rest of it, then you don't have to read the rest of it.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I might try that.
Yeah, you can kind of look up what ones deal with what kind of thing and be like, oh, this is it. Like the ones that deal with the witches, I don't think you would enjoy.
Probably not.
Yeah, but the ones that deal with death are very interesting. The second one of those is Hogfather, which is one of my favorite books. But the first 2 Discworld books both deal with Rincewind, the wizard, and I cannot get into it. Apparently it's deep political satire, but if you don't know what it's satirizing, which is early 1960s, like, British politics, then you're just lost.
Well, I guess that's why I can't get into it.
That is why we can't get into it.
We weren't born then.
No, we were not. Okay, thanks, Aaron. Next on the line, we have Paul Carberry, author of the Zombies on the Rocks series. What gives you reader's block, Paul?
I forget the name of the book. I think it's The Children of Huron.
Oh, the J.R.R. Tolkien spin-off.
I was reading it, and I could not finish that book. It just didn't work for me.
Yeah.
I would say that was the one book, and like I tried several times because I did like the Lord of the Rings growing up.
I did not.
I know you did not.
Yeah,
but I was trying to read it, and I was just like, no, it's not doing it.
That was a book. There have been, I think, 2 or 3 now that were based on the Silmarillion, where Christopher Tolkien has taken the sketched out stories that his father wrote in the Silmarillion and has tried to flesh them out and make full short novels of them.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like a bit of not exaggeration, but elaboration upon something that was already talked about.
Which is fine. I'm glad he's doing that, because there are people who are hungry for more in that universe. Exactly. I'm glad that it's there.
It's like...
I almost wish we could get... Christopher is the caretaker of the estate, obviously, and if he wants to do some of the books, absolutely, but I honestly think it would be worth their time to seek out, like, okay, here's this story from the Silmarillion that's kind of scary, let's see if we can get Stephen King or someone like that to write it, and Chris edits it and makes it so that it still fits in canon.
Right, like if they got George R. R. Martin...
Well, he's already behind. He doesn't need another project, but yes.
But, like, if he was to write something Lord of the Rings, like, it would fit if it was, like, more of a gritty story, like a bit of a betrayal story or something. Like, he could probably write that better than Chris could.
Yeah. No offense to Chris, but, like...
Everyone has their... I could not write romance.
No.
It's just not in me.
No. They have... I can't write a normal Newfoundland story to save my life. But, there is a point where it's like, maybe we should... take the opportunity, because I'm sure there are hundreds of authors who would love to contribute to the Lord of the Rings universe.
Right.
You've got an opportunity to get the best of the best and expand it a bit, but he could edit it and make sure it stays true to his father's vision.
Maybe that's the whole question of ego coming into play. Maybe his ego will not let him have anyone else involved.
Yeah, maybe.
It could be.
Could.
But, maybe
it's also protective. I mean, like, he loved his father. You know what I mean? Like,
so it could be anything.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Paul. Next we have Ellen Curtis, author of Infinity and the Tourniquet Reprisal. What gives you reader's block, Ellen?
You try managing the submissions folder for Engine for, a couple years.
I am, actually.
You just started because I got reader's block.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, we've been really blessed. I mean, we got a lot of really, really excellent stuff come through. But you also get a lot of unpolished work come through. So when, say, you've got 6 unpolished pieces in a row, you're there banging your head against the keyboard wondering, like, is it something that's wrong with me? Like, am I giving this a fair enough shake? And there have been instances where that's been the case, and, I've asked someone else, oh, can you take a look at this as well? It's just the feeling that I'm getting.
Okay, thanks, Ellen. Next up, we have Bridget Canning, author of The Greatest Hits of Wanda Janes, which was nominated for an NLBA award last year. What book gave you reader's block, Bridget?
If I'm just kind of not in the mood for something, I'll usually put it down. Or a couple years ago, 6 years ago actually, I had surgery. And then afterwards, I had major surgery and I was recovering and feeling tired, feeling really low energy. And I found it so hard to read anything. What was I reading at the time? I was reading The Book Thief. And I had to put it down because it was just too heavy.
Yep.
And then so I just read like Buffy the Vampire Slayer comic books for about 2 months or something like that. Like I just read. It's like so it's not really reading block. It's just sometimes I can't just read anything. Like I'll need to shift into something else. Sometimes I also find if I'm writing fiction, sometimes I find it difficult to read fiction. So I'll read poetry, or I'll look at a screenplay, or I'll read nonfiction or something like that. So it's more of I do like to usually am always reading something, but if I'm finding something kind of hard, I just figure this is difficult at the time. I'll probably pick it up again later, and I'll just switch.
What did you think of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer comics?
Oh, they were great. They were a bit tangly.
Yeah.
It was that's the thing. That's a nice thing about taking that show and being able to put it in comics, because suddenly you have all this freedom. Like you don't have a budget, and so the world got a lot bigger and a lot more wilder and things like that. I'm a bit behind on them right now. I haven't read them for a while. I reread them this winter, and I was going to start picking up the new ones, and I haven't done so yet.
I've been trying to.
But I find that whole universe really captivating. So.
Me too. I own all the seasons of both shows, Buffy and Angel on DVD. Loved it for a long time. It was my go-to thing, and the shows still are. I'm excited. It's like there's a new show coming out in the universe. I found that the comics, I was like, I learned how much of my love for that world was the actor's portrayal of them, or the music cues, or the this or the that, because even with the same writers back, and the writing was still so strong, when you took all that away, it lost something for me. I don't know. I keep kind of wishing that they would do, like, direct-to-DVD animated movies based on that, and get people who at least sound like the actors back, get the music cues back. I'm like, now I'm in.
Yeah, they could do a lot of different things with that. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, Bridget. Next up, we have Brad Dunn, author of After Dark Vapors. Brad will be at Elaine's Books at 208 Duckworth Street, Saturday, December 8th, signing copies of his new book. But for the meantime, what book gave you reader's block, Brad?
I remember when I finished Ulysses, it was like I didn't know what else to read then. I tried to read the last Harry Potter book came out at that point, and I remember trying to read it, and I was like, I can't read this. Yeah. It kind of like just poisoned my brain for a little bit. Yeah, you know. And I find that I'm kind of going through it a bit now, actually, where it's like I'm kind of picking up books and not finishing them, and you know.
It's hard sometimes if you get a couple of books that don't feel quite right for you at that moment in a row.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. And TV is so easily available, like Netflix, just click something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Brad. Next, we have Diana Browne, author of Saltwater Joys. What book gave you reader's block, Diana?
So, during I find reading is very good. So, when you're going through something difficult in your life, sometimes reading will take you away and will bring you somewhere else. But sometimes you just can't go there. Like, you read the paragraph, and you have to reread the paragraph, and then you have to reread the paragraph. Because
reality steps in.
Yeah, so you have other things on your mind, and you just kind of push that away. But I find when I'm in a better state of mind, you know, relaxed, and then I can read. But if you're stressed, it's kind of hard.
It is.
Yeah.
Stress is killer. Stress is hate it.
Yeah.
Obviously. I don't think anyone likes stress.
No. Sometimes I did do a course, though, and stress can be actually a good motivator.
I would love to know about that because that's
so if you can look at stress as something that's positive, and it'll catapult you into what you need to do.
It has been said that most people's natural state is most people's natural state of mind is relaxed.
Yep.
Like they go back to that. My natural state is in stress. I start to get anxious when I'm told to relax.
Yeah.
Like when it's like, no, you have to sit there and do nothing. I start to shake. I'm just like, but there's things that need to be done.
Yeah.
I don't think you've run a small business.
Yeah.
Stuff needs to be done.
Yeah. Just constantly turning. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Diana. Next, we have Amanda Labonte, author of the Call of the Sea and Supernatural Causes series. Amanda will be at Elaine's Books downtown at 208 Duckworth Street from 1 to 3 Saturday, December 1st, signing copies of her book. For right now, what book gave you reader's block, Amanda?
Oh, like when you can't find you can't settle in to read something?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I hate that because it usually is just a sign of not being able to, like, relax and calm your mind, like, for me. So like when I can't settle in to read something, it just means that like I probably can't settle into much. Like I'm just, my brain is too go. So yeah, that sucks.
It does.
I don't like it.
No, I'm not a fan.
No.
Is it ever a different, do you ever find there's a certain author that does it, or is it just the external world coming in?
It's the external world coming in, like, and usually it's like, you know, maybe I'm behind on work, or I haven't, you know, been catching up on, like, my own writing, or it could be anything, but yeah. It's occasionally, not very often, but occasionally it'll happen because I read something amazing and I can't get into anything else.
That's fair.
Like it's almost like it's cleansed my mind too much, and I can't pick up another book.
I was in a class with Jessica Grant once, and she said that in some way she blames every book for not being the previous book.
Yeah.
Like she's so used to that point of view, and then that book ends, and when she starts the next one, there's like this adjustment period.
Like, I remember I was in high school, and it was summer, and I read To Kill a Mockingbird for the first time. And when I finished that book, like, I couldn't read another book. And
certainly not to go set a Watchmen.
No, and I ended up just reading it again.
Yeah.
Like that was how I almost had to to let my mind like come down from reading it before I could go on to something else, because it was like nothing else was going to be that book for me. And it was almost like it was you get that amazing experience where it's like you've had this wonderful experience with this book, but at the same time, like, nothing else is ever going to be that experience, and you're never going to get that experience of reading that book for the first time back.
Yeah.
And it's I've had reader's block.
We've talked about To Kill a Mockingbird before. It's actually one of the best books out there. I learned recently that one of the reasons it got well known so fast is it was one of the first experiments in paperback.
Really?
Yeah. I did
not know that.
Yeah, after it won the Pulitzer Prize, because for a period it was thought that like paperbacks that were really easily accessible were like the sleazy, like the crime stories and the this and the that,
like the Harlequins.
Yeah,
and that kind of thing.
Anything with literary merit was in hardback and never anything else. And To Kill a Mockingbird, I was watching this documentary on it, was one of the first, if not the first, that they were like, no, let's make this widely accessible to everyone. Everyone needs to read this book, and they made them cheaply, widely available. And and they became a staple of like high schools.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you, Amanda. Next we have John Dobbin, whose book The Starving comes out in 2019. What book gave you reader's block, John?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I find that this actually, before I started forcing myself to read a little bit more, I found that I could read a lot for a few months, but then I'd get to the point where I'm like, hey, okay, I'm not really interested in doing much reading right now. And so it would take me a while to get over that.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of a reader's block. But I've been finding lately that where I have been reading a lot more, that if I get into a book and it's not what I envisioned, I kind of put off reading it.
Yep.
Like I don't want to read it anymore.
Yep.
And I have to really force myself unwillingly to read it to get through it.
I just give up on those books. Unless it's something I need to read for class or for research for something, it's just gone. Like there's a famous author that I've never been able to read one of his books. I've tried multiple times, but William Gibson.
Yeah.
He's famous. He's one of the top, like, when people, think of the hardcore sci-fi people, it's like he's always... Yeah. He's one of the top... Neuromancer, exactly that. Cannot do it. Now I tried to read that, tried to read its sequels, tried to read something other by him, and I don't know what it is about his style. I tried ebook, I tried print, I tried audiobook. I just give up at about 3 chapters and be like, I could do better things.
I managed to get through that, but I see what you're saying about it.
I don't know what, like, I can handle different styles. I can handle, like, Rendezvous with Rama, like, and I can handle Snow Crash. Like, it's,
The only book that I've done that with recently was the first of that series of books that Stephen King did with Peter Straub.
Okay. Talisman.
I did not enjoy that whatsoever. Couldn't get past the first couple of chapters. Had to put it down.
Interesting.
Which is weird because Stephen King's one of my favorite writers.
Yeah. Which can only lead you to believe that it's either the Straub side of it that you're not liking, or that they're losing something in collaboration.
Yeah,
might be interesting to read something by Straub only and see if you have trouble with it, and then you're like, oh, well, that's what the problem was for me.
Yeah, blame it all on him.
Yeah. Thank you, John. And lastly, we have Kelly Power, current president of the Writers Alliance Newfoundland and Labrador, and also frequent contributor to short story compilations, including Kit Sora, the Autobiography, released this month, Chillers from the Rock, which went bestseller, and What's Written in the Ladies, edited by Bridget Canning. What book gave you reader's block, Kelly?
I have definitely had that. I have found it's periodic and tied to... I can usually tie it to something.
An author?
No, because I'll just close that book and I'll move right on if it's a particular author.
I've tried a few times with William Gibson and do not understand. Also Tolkien, but my antipathy toward Tolkien is well documented.
You have a partner in arms there. I'm not a fan of written Tolkien, and I know that that's like an offense punishable by death. But
it's dry.
It is dry. I've never even attempted to read Lord of the Rings because I read The Hobbit, and I said, that's enough of that. I can't see myself going through 3 tomes of this after I've done The Hobbit. Now, my brother...
Tomb is a great term for it, because you'll think you will see through time and think you're dead while you are reading Tolkien.
My brain is dying a slow death over dwarfish songs, and I can't.
Oh no, there is one point in it where you have watched, in the movies, that point where Merry and Pippin have helped the trees defeat Saruman, spoilers, yes. And then Legolas and Gimli come and you meet them and they just go, what have you two been up to, and this and that kind of thing. That's all very well and good in the movie. In the book, you read both plot lines. Like, you read Gimli's plot, and then you read Legolas's plot, and then you read Merry and Pippin's plot, and then when they all hook up, instead of cutting back and cutting away and being like, oh, they filled each other in, no, you're subjected to 4.5 pages where they recap everything you just read. It violates the basic principle of writing, which is don't give the reader the same information twice, and just does it ad nauseum. And I'm like, what are you thinking?
Was it last year you did the...
Lit Wars.
Yeah, the Lit Wars.
Which I won.
Is that subjective or objective?
That is... There was audience applause stating that I lost, but that audience was biased. It was a sci-fi convention.
You knew in your heart that you had actually won.
I did.
So, have I had the reading doldrums? I've definitely had that. I've had it typically when I've been forced to be reading other things that I don't want to read, so it leaves me no time to read the things I want to read. Like doing my master's was like that. But when I did finally crack that doing my master's, it's when I read the whole Harry Potter series. So once you pierce the wall, it's good. And I'm actually on a reading jag right now, so it's unusual. I feel like I'm coming off a reading downtime straight into this period of voracious consumption of books.
Interesting. I feel like the last 2 years were big voracious consumption years for me. Like, in addition to getting a lot of writing done, I think in 2017 I read 300 novels.
Well, you had yourself sort of out there saying you were trying to get through
a lot.
Yeah, a ton of books that particular year. But so would you have done all those books if you hadn't set that challenge for yourself?
I can't now. I've got too much on the go with the company. Like, there's just too much. I've been struggling to get through one that I'm excited to read. And I'm like, dang it. Okay, thanks for coming on there, Kelly. Okay, well, that's been our show, ladies and gentlemen. This episode was not planned this way, but this was not kind to Lord of the Rings in the slightest. It is one of the best-selling novels of all time, so it can rest on that. In our list of books that caused our guest readers block, we have The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings in its entirety, The Children of Huron. We also have The Book Thief, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, The Talisman by Stephen King and Peter Straub, also the entirety of the works of Jane Austen, Terry Pratchett, and Neil Gaiman, which I assume also includes when Pratchett and Gaiman team up. So that is a good chunk of literary greats, which our panel of authors at some point in time felt were not so great, but we'd like to hear from you. If you'll go on the Write Project Podcast Facebook page, please let us know which books you have a hard time getting through. Was it something popular or something less so? Was it something difficult? Was it a draft of a friend's book? What was the book? Was it a comic? Was it a graphic novel? Was it a classic novel or a modern novel? What book did you have trouble getting through that caused you some reader's block, and why? Again, as we've mentioned a few times in this program, we have a few events coming up leading up to the holiday season. On December 1st, Amanda Labonte, who's been a frequent guest on this show and on these panels, is going to be at Elaine's Books at 208 Duckworth Street, signing copies of Call of the Sea, Drawn to the Tides, and Supernatural Causes. On December 8th, at the same location, Brad Dunn will be at Elaine's Book, signing copies of his new book, After Dark Vapors. Be sure and check that out. It's a great gift for anyone who's a fan of werewolves, horror, or even just great Newfoundland literary fiction. Also, if there's anyone listening who's still honing their writing skills or is interested in becoming a better writer, starting in January 2019, we will be bringing back our writing classes at the Engine offices. We have slots open for the beginner, intermediate, and advanced levels. Please reach out to Matthew LeDrew at enginebooks.com if you have any interest in that. For all of you, we'll be here again next week at 4:30 Newfoundland time or online at chmr.ca. Please tune in and we'll talk more about writing culture in Newfoundland.